Do you have oil on site? Is your SPCC plan in good shape? Are you worried about what an SPCC violation could cost you or your company? Well, you'd be surprised how many facilities either don't have a plan when they should, or they just have one sitting on a shelf collecting dust. Now, in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the most common violations that we have seen and our clients have historically dealt with when it comes to SPCC plans, why they happen, and how we fix them so that you can stay in compliance and out of trouble. Hey, this is Dennis Ruhlin from Resource Management Associates, your environmental experts. And before we get into it, I want to mention we do a lot of SPCC work here at RMA for facilities all across the United States. So if you need a hand with anything SPCC related, reach out and we'll see how we can help. All right, let's start off with a quick refresher. SPCC stands for Spill Prevention, Control, and Countermeasure. And if your facility has more than 1,320 gallons of oil stored above ground, you're very likely required to have a plan regardless of where you operate in the United States. Now, this isn't just a binder to check a box on a list of compliance items. It's supposed to be a living part of your operations. Unfortunately, that's not how it plays out at most facilities. All right, so let's run through these violations that cause real financial penalties when it comes to SPCC noncompliance. First one's a no-brainer. There's no SPCC plan around when it's clearly required. This one is very obvious and it's still way too common. If you need an SPCC plan, get one. Listen to your consultant, your industry trade group, or whoever is telling you that you need one. Second, no inspection records, or even worse, inspection records that are clearly pre-filled out ahead of time. We see this all the time, and it's a terrible, terrible, terrible move. This is the kind of practice that could, in theory, lead to serious problems like criminal charges in extreme cases. So don't ever fill out inspection records ahead of time. Always do them the day of your actual inspection. Third is improper or lacking secondary containment. We see this all the time. Drums are sitting around without spill pallets, there's no containment walls around tanks, or if there is, it's way too small. And my personal favorite, containment walls that have holes or gaps in them. I always say to people, imagine how well your swimming pool or bathtub would work if you had a hole in it the size of a baseball. Not very well. Fourth is untrained staff or no documentation of training. And as they say, if it wasn't documented, it never happened. Remember, annual SPCC training is a baseline requirement. There has to be some type of annual documented training for anyone who handles oil at your facility. The fifth one is outdated or missing 5-year reviews. So remember, you're supposed to be looking at your SPCC plan at a minimum of every 5 years, but we see plans that are 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years old without any sort of updates at all. Your plan should always reflect your current operations, not reflect your business from a decade ago. Additionally, plan expectations change, so you need to revisit your plan every couple of years to make sure that it is as robust as expected. And lastly is a plan that's technically complete but clearly untouched. No training documentation, no inspection records, just a binder full of paper that's never even been opened. You knew you needed a plan, but you never followed through with it. And from our experience, that's when regulators really bring the hammer down. So why do these violations happen? Well, it's not always carelessness. A big part of the problem is that SPCC enforcement is really weak across the United States. Most state regulators don't check these plans because they're not part of their state level regulations. It's just not their jurisdiction. That's like asking how come a traffic officer isn't enforcing code enforcement issues or your town tax clerk isn't checking on your smoke detectors. It's all about delegation. SPCC is federal, and the EPA rarely inspects small or mid-sized sites unless there's a problem. Because of this, things tend to get forgotten, and that means that a lot of folks have simply never heard of SPCC, or if they have one, they don't take compliance seriously. And even if they have a plan, they keep using the same one for years, over and over and over again, without updating it, without training, because no one's saying that they're doing things incorrectly. Well, if you're worried about SPCC violations and how to get your environmental program back on track, here's how we typically help clients, which is in one of two primary ways. Either we start off by developing a brand new SPCC plan from scratch for sites that have never had one, or we'll go in and we'll revamp an existing SPCC program. Maybe that means a new update, maybe that means some training, maybe that means better inspection documentation. We'll visit your site, we'll update or rebuild the plan, we'll train your team, and we'll get you set up with proper procedures so compliance is easy in the long term. Now, let's talk about the cost of not doing this and discuss what SPCC violations can really cost you, because honestly, isn't that what we all want to know? Well, in short, it can be a lot. SPCC violations can be up to $68,445 per day per violation. While most violations won't be that extreme, it's very common for 5- and 6-figure violations to be issued to small and medium-sized companies for moderate to severe SPCC violations. All right, story time real quick. We had a smaller client who skipped getting out on a $3,000 SPCC plan about a decade ago. We told them time and time again to get one, and they said, we're going to risk it. We've never seen the EPA in here, and we're not spending the money. Now, let's suppose that they did have a plan for a second. What would that actually cost them over the last decade? Well, if they kept up with it, let's say $10,000. Figure $3,000 to develop the plan, maybe 10 to 20% yearly for training and restocking spill kits, buying containment devices, training, simple stuff like that, and $1,000 every 5 years for an outsider like us to come in and update their documentation. So again, figure about $1,000 a year, 10 grand over a decade. The problem is they had a spill, and it was a decent sized one. And it was because a disgruntled employee, who was never caught, vandalized their property and released thousands of gallons into a wetlands. So they called it into the state, the local fire department, and then the police arrived. And state regulators showed up alongside state police officers. The EPA showed up. The federal government got involved. They asked for a copy of their SPCC plan, and since they didn't have one, the violations started being discussed almost immediately. The discussions with the EPA about the fine started off in the low millions. Now, their final settlement with the government alone was about $85,000, but that doesn't include attorney fees or what they paid us to help get them back into compliance with SPCC regulations, developing a plan, and then training them. Nor does it include the spill kits that they had to buy, the containment that they needed to build, or the business interruptions at this location. This mistake alone easily cost them well over $100,000 when it was all said and done. That's the true cost of SPCC violations. It was easily over $100,000 versus $10,000. Now think about that. Non-compliance alone cost them well over 10 times the amount, just because they didn't want to do the right thing. I'm not a financial whiz, but I'd rather spend $10,000 over a decade instead of $100,000 over a couple of weeks, wouldn't you? You have to remember, it's not always a dramatic tank rupture or a leaky pipe. No, sometimes it's a distracted or disgruntled employee. Sometimes it's vandalism. The cause doesn't matter. If you're not in compliance, if you don't have an SPCC plan, you can expect hefty fines when an issue happens. But the good news, it's fixable, and we're here to help fix it. So how do you move forward? Easy. You can visit our pricing page to use our free SPCC project cost calculator to get a realistic range of what SPCC services could cost for an operation of your size. You can check out our Learning Center to learn more about SPCC plans, or you can reach out to us over the phone, email, or schedule some time to talk with one of us here at RMA. However you approach it, the most important thing is not ignoring your SPCC requirements until they become a bigger compliance problem